Lindsay, whenever you are ready, you can go ahead and start.
Okay. Hello and good evening. My name is Lindsay Tomat of the UMKC University News, and I welcome you to the University of Missouri, Kansas City 2021-2022 Student Government Association Presidential Debate between current SGA President Mahreen Ansari and former Presidential Society President Tim Nguyen. Tonight's questions were curated by the University News Editorial Board and the UMKC student body. Neither candidate has received a copy of these questions in advance. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for their opening statement, 3 minutes for their closing statement, and 2 minutes to answer each question. Candidates, your time will begin when you start speaking. Your mic will be muted by the host if you are still speaking when the time is up. Now for the opening statements. We will start with the incumbent, SGA President Mahreen Ansari. President Ansari, you may begin.
Thank you so much for having me here. Like Lindsay said, my name is Mahreen Ansari. I use any pronouns. I am the current SGA president seeking re-election on the ticket UMKC Onward. We care about issues like student involvement in SGA, campus sustainability, on-campus housing, and of course, just doing a better job to reimagine the resources we have under COVID-19. When I think about campus sustainability, I think of very specifically the dining hall because I'm an on-campus student. And so as we've seen because of COVID-19, we have had to transition to all plastic single-use plates and utensils to keep everyone safe. And although we understand that this is a measure to keep everyone safe, we think that there are alternatives that we could use that are either biodegradable or compostable to combat like the hundreds of pounds of plastic that we throw away every week. When I think of on-campus housing as a student who lives in on-campus housing, I think of the contracts that we have. And I think very specifically about all of the first-year students who came in and who were very interested and very excited about living on campus. But because of one issue or another, they decided that living on campus wasn't for them after their first semester. And so now they have this very complicated contract to deal with. And so we think that we can talk to Residential Life about maybe considering offering an alternative one-semester contract for students who want to try it out. And when I think of students who want to be involved with SGA and like creating more routes for it, I think of all of the emails and the messages that I got when I was vice president last fall semester about first year students who were so excited and interested, who were like, yeah, I was part of SGA when I was in high school and I want to try it out here. I want to be involved. Give me a project, something. I want to get involved. And the only thing I could really tell them was like, you can come to a Senate meeting and like advocate for like student issues that you see, but we don't really have anything for you to do besides that. And so I'm looking at creating a application for students to apply to be SGA community representatives on the different committees and councils that we have around campus, so that one, we can have a more idea of what's going on campus, maybe connect different student groups with each other or different committees and councils together so that we understand like, oh, like they're working on a sustainability project and over here, we're trying to figure out what we can do for volunteering for our group. So connecting those kind of things, and also just like, as an exec board, it's part of our duty to serve on committees, but it's like there's 6 of us, there's over 15 committees and councils on our campus. We can't all do it. It's a lot. So I think it's a really great opportunity to extend that to students who want to get involved, but there are no real ways. And of course, last but not least, student resources. That was an issue that we ran on for reform last year, and that is an issue that will probably continue to exist in the future. And with COVID-19, it has seriously thrown a wrench in any kind of plan or idea that we originally had. And so we really want to look at what is the best way to advertise under COVID-19, what is the best way to reimagine current resources that we have, and look at expanding what also that we have. I think that there's lots of potential looking at the...
Next is former Presidential Society President Tim Nguyen. Mr. Nguyen.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Nguyen. I come here to inform and tell everyone where I stand. I intend to strengthen student involvement, professional development, and community service. Those are the 3 pillars that I stand for, and I think that is essential to the UMKC college experience. I want to help to work towards overcome these barriers, limiting involvement and participation. I hope to offer innovative ideas, bring these creative ideas to the table of what can be done to encourage student involvement, professional development, and community service in today's environment with what we face, with what we confront from the pandemic, and what we will have encounter beyond the pandemic. And I want UMKC students to feel a sense of belonging, to foster that sense of community, and to show that each person that attends UMKC can be a person for their community, not just in it. Something that I want to talk to about in particular is why I am so heavily focused on student engagement. There's 4 things that come to mind, which may be barriers to student engagement. One being differences in policies. Social distancing policies have differed across campus. Why is it that people live in the same dorm or they go to the CAF and they sit at the same table? Where they go to the library, they're not able to sit at the same table. That sense of inconsistency in those policies need to be the same across the floor. For example, if you go over to Spencer Chemistry Building, the social distancing policies and group studying there is different than what you see at each UMKC campus ground. So that's one area. Secondly, limited interaction. That's another barrier to student engagement. With classes and organizations all being online, students aren't coming to campus, they're not being engaged. And then you have online burnout. Students are bombarded with emails, Canvas, Pathway, you name it, all these online notifications, which is another barrier to student engagement. And then lastly, the 4th one, safety and social fear. With health concerns regarding COVID-19, students are finding it difficult to engage. So with those barriers, this is something that I want to put my focus on to address. I want these students to know that I want to listen first before I act. I want to have the students' feedback on everything that goes on. It's not just me wanting to do something because I see it, because I want to fix it. I believe in the idea and diversity of thought and thinking, and the importance of different communities, different committees bringing to the table students' ideas and their thoughts and working to implement those changes together. I desire to be the students' president, and I have the mentality of I want to use my position to help see what students desire to be addressed. So as far as community service, professional development, and student involvement, as well as tackling and addressing their feedback on the first semester experience.
Thank you. The next question is, why are you running? We'll start with President Ansari.
So I am seeking re-election because I love the campus and I love the students and I care deeply for both. I have been so grateful to have been afforded this opportunity to be the representative to the administration and to advocate on behalf of all students. I want to continue doing this. Being a public servant in this capacity brings me so much joy. I always love it when students talk to me about different issues that they have and we come up with plans on how to address them. I remember a while back, I had a meeting with the Students Against Hate Coalition and we talked about their statement on wanting to keep German and Arabic classes. And so we brought that statement over to the Senate and we had the Senate signed on, and I took that to the administration and I talked to the chancellor about like what can we do to keep this? What are steps that we can take to allow students to keep taking these classes? And that whole process was just so fulfilling, being able to be like, these are issues that students are facing, and I was able to take it up and be like, hey, students care about this, I care about this, let's see what we can do to keep it going. So I want to continue to be able to do that on the behalf of students. I leave my time.
Thank you. Mr. Nguyen, you have 2 minutes.
So in regards to running, something that I thought about when I got the emails, I was thinking, why not? I think I would live with the regret of not applying, not going for it. Should I let this pass? And I think next year I'll be a senior, and to be completely transparent, next month in April sometime, I'm going to interview for dental school. So I'll later on see if I get in, fingers crossed by the end of this year, sometime near the end of 2021. But with that being said, I'm really doing this for the experience. Something that kind of ignited this passion was in November of 2019. So I think when I was a sophomore, actually, I took an honors class called Honors Anchors in the Honors College, and it was taught by Dr. Wood and Dr. Chris, and it was social justice. It was a class about implementing change. So even before I heard about SGA, I was a part of a group, part of a team, and we tackled UMKC parking. I think this is an issue that I think was talked about in the news or such through UMKC. And within that was something that I was passionate for. I wanted to make a difference, be someone for my community, not just someone in my community. And we were tackling about UMKC parking because there's a lot of feelings associated when that phrase is uttered. But within that class, we were trying to tackle to reduce the cost of parking. And along that same line of thought, we were trying to address how can we have more parking spots at UMKC, especially with all those parking spots outside Miller Nichols. A lot of them are faculty parking and some other places. And we made strides in that, in the sense of they actually took some of those faculty parkings outside of Miller Nichols and some other spots and made them student only parking. So something where I wasn't a part of SGA, but because I was a part of the class and I wanted to be someone for my community, I was a part of that team and was able to grow from that. I think
That's time. The next question is, how do you plan to work with the chancellor if you are elected? We'll start with Mr. Nguyen.
So I hold great admiration and respect for Dr. Agrawal. I met him, I think, my freshman year during the Trustee Scholar reception, and I have high regards for him. And I think for me to have that invaluable opportunity to work with him, I would want to hear his concerns, his voices, because he has a team, he has committees and expertise. I think I would want to learn from him, his advice and wisdom, and then bring forth the students' concerns from what they say, and be able to bridge that, be able to be that mediator, bringing up, lifting those students' voices, their concerns, whether it be, the fall semester experience with the feedback that the freshmen may have to UMKC parking, or even the inconsistent policies, bringing that to his attention. Because if we're trying to drive on campus more people to come to campus, and speaking with some faculties, such as in the biology side, we're supposed to have a record registration from people who took a gap year, people who took time off, they're coming onto campus this fall. This is going to be an even greater, bigger size incoming class. And so knowing that, what can we do to encourage people to have the consistent policies across campus, like I said, with all buildings, all UMKC grounds to have common social distancing policies. Otherwise, if it's like the library, you're only pushing students away to go study at Messenger Coffee or somewhere off campus because they're allowed to study together in groups that the library does not allow them.
Thank you. Now to President Ansari.
So I would continue working with the chancellor as I do currently, which is I like to communicate with him whenever we have issues that come up with students or issues that I see happening. Me and him have scheduled meetings for at least once a month where we talk about these things. Just like Tim, I do hold great respect for the chancellor, but I also understand that he has the point of view as someone who's in administration, who sees all the red tape. And I have the point of view of a student who sees all of the possibility and all of the opportunities that we have to strive for greater. And I will continue to use like that perspective to push the chance to be like, I know that you see the red tape in this issue, but I see where we can do better, where we can better advocate for students. Because at the end of the day, I'm here to represent students and student issues and student points of view, even if that's something that may contradict with what the chancellor sees as an issue or what he believes. So I think that I would, of course, respectfully speak to him about these issues, but I'd really try to push him, as I do right now, to be like, let's see what we can do better here. I think that you're seeing lots of red tape, but I'm seeing a lot of like green signs to keep going, and that there's something that we can do about this issue. So continuing that sort of relationship with him, where I can try to kind of push him a little bit to be like, hey, like what can we do better for students?
Thank you. The next question is, how do you plan to ensure student involvement increases as we continue to recover from the pandemic? We'll start with President Ansari. So
I think that student involvement is relatively same in the sense that the same students who feel connected on campus are continuing to be connected. That there is, I do recognize that there's a percentage of the students who were previously connected on campus, like pre-COVID, have kind of dropped off the map. But I think that one of our biggest things is how do we bring in the greater student population to get more involved on campus? Because I hate that people are like, oh, UMKC is a commuter campus. And it's like, we are, but that doesn't mean that we should have like a low student involvement. Just because we have like non-traditional students, it doesn't mean that they don't want to be involved. So I think that one of the number one ways to increase student involvement in students who have not been tapped at all to be like involved on campus, but also to bring back the populations that we've kind of lost because of COVID, is just working on advertisement, working on better connecting different student orgs. Like I've seen lots of different student orgs co-host events, and I've seen how that's pulled a lot of really great turnout. I've also seen the way that raffles have really brought students out and into involvement. And I think that also putting lots of emphasis on the student involvement fairs that we have at the beginning of each of the semesters, making sure that like as many organizations as we can get are being involved or going to those fairs to talk to students. And also just finding other ways to get to students, whether that's like through social media, through emails, through like texting or something like that, like finding ways to notify students. Like we have so many organizations on campus at UMKC. There must be something that you're interested in getting involved in. How can we help you get involved? How can we connect you to the student org? I think that there's lots of potential for that to happen, especially with like COVID-19. We've seen lots of student orgs who previously may not have had a super active social media page or something like that. Like they realize like the importance for this, and they've put 110% into like running their Instagrams and Twitters and stuff like that to make sure that they're letting students know that they're having meetings and where they're meeting and how they're meeting and maybe what their meeting topics are to bring in more.
That's time. Mr. Nguyen, how do you plan to ensure student involvement increases as we continue to recover from the pandemic?
So with student involvement, as we all know, it's important. The importance that we can see from student involvement is, yes, you have your professional development. It's allowing each person that steps foot at UMKC to develop their career. It's an opportunity for us to have students engage on campus to build those leaders. And then community service is another important aspect of student involvement. How can we get our UMKC community to give back to the greater KC? And as I mentioned, those barriers that we face, whether it be the online burnout, the limited interactions, the safety and social fear regarding and surrounding COVID-19, or the differences in those policies that we see at UMKC with the various buildings. I think an alternative that may come into play that could be addressed, which I mentioned before, is the first semester experience. If we were able to create some kind of opportunity for students to be engaged onto campus, and whether that be we're able to invite organizations to come speak. So there's more opportunities that students can see the faces of those who lead those organizations, whether it be APO, community service-based organization, whether it be pre-professional, pre-dent society, pre-med society, pre-farm society, whatever that may be. Beyond the classroom experience. So where can we allow students to really develop and focus their professional development, to engage, explore opportunities, set themselves up for internships later down the road? And then something else I wanted to touch on was community service. If we had something, an alternative perhaps to the first semester experience being community service, if it was 10 hours per each student, if you came in with 3 years of college, then you would only have 2.5 hours to do. Something that can be scaled. So if you look at that each year, if each person could spend 2.5 hours of community service volunteering, giving back to their community, if we had every single student do that in fall of 2020, we would have over 73,000 hours of community service as a whole, which really not only allows us to instill confidence in the students, but really empowers students.
What do you view as the biggest issue students face right now, and how would you aim to solve it in the Student Government Association? We'll start with Mr. Nguyen.
So the biggest issue, I think, is student engagement, student involvement. That's something that I'm really passionate for. I think, yes, we need to engage the students. How are we going to do that? We need to envision with the students' voices, on one hand, as well as what the chancellor and what his team committees may say What can we do to plan more community service based or engage the undergrads? And we need to embrace, yes, there's small issues, but we need to tackle them one issue at a time, whether it be UMKC parking, whether it be UMKC housing, with a real game plan to meet the needs of the university and the students' needs as well. I know UMKC has that commuter stigma, and that's something, we need to address if we want to attract students to come to UMKC. And I think by coupling, whether it be community service, whether it be professional development, like I mentioned with the first semester experience, possibly an alternative to that, we are able to allow students to be for their community versus just being someone in their community.
Thank you. President Ansari?
I would say one of the number one student issues on campus right now is student connectivity. As someone who lives in the dorms and someone who, my roommate is a freshman right now. And so I try to talk to her a lot and be like, hey, like, how are you? How are you doing? And I remember like one of our first conversations when I asked her about like how her experience at UMKC is going to see if I could do anything to support her. She told me about how like she felt really disconnected from other people on campus and how there's this like sense of loneliness, like not only within the freshman class, but like with students at our university because of like COVID-19 and how everything is structured so differently. So many students, they just feel very disconnected from each other. They want to make friends. And it's been really difficult for people who live on campus, especially because I think looking back at my first year experience living on campus, my whole entire floor were like besties. We used to all go to like lunch together and dinner together. And some of us would hang out like on the weekends and stuff like that. And so I feel like a lot of students are like missing that sense of connectivity. And I think that we need to do more work to connect these students with each other. The OSI, Office of Student Involvement, started an initiative to do like pen pals or something like that. I'm not sure what the name of it is, but I signed up for it. And it's basically like they pair you up with other students who have similar like interests as you to kind of bridge that connectivity. And I signed up for that program and I'm really enjoying it. I've made 2 new friends and I think that that's a program that we can extend. I also think that we can do a better job of, like I said before, with connecting students to student groups, because like that's how lots of other people also make friends. It's not just like who you live with, it's also like what groups are you part of where you have those shared interests and you make those friends through that. So I think that like better advertisement and of course just like encouraging students to be like, hey, like you should go to the Student Involvement Fest and see if there's an org that's about like rock climbing, because I know you're interested in that. Why don't you go to that? So kind of like having that encouragement to like.
Thank you. Former President Brandon Henderson's resignation made it clear that the SGA presidency is a lot to take on. With all due sensitivity, do you think that you have the mental and emotional bandwidth to take on the position of SGA president, and why? We will start with current President Ansari.
So I have all of the respect in the world for Brandon. Me and him are really good friends. And I do think that recognizing how he took on a lot of SGA duties on his own was one thing that caused him to have burnout. And so that is something that I have made the point of like not doing. I make sure that I communicate with my team how I'm doing and if I feel overburdened and how they can help me out, how we can share this burden of being the voice for the students. So oftentimes if I have tasks that I'm like, I need a break, I can't do this, I talk to Daphne, who's my vice president, or I talk to Victor, who's internal affairs, or I even talk to Cole, or I talk to Abby, who's my chief of staff, or like anyone who could help me out with this, so that we all also get the opportunity to be like the public servant for the students who gets things done, but also so that we don't all feel overburdened. And so making sure that I have a good team around me is something that I've also made the priority with my re-election campaign. I'm going to be honest, I did not know everyone except for Abby, like basically at all. Me and Malavika and Abby were all in her campus together, which kind of like made us get to know each other better, but we weren't exactly friends. And I only kind of knew Kyle through Cole because Kyle was involved in SAFC, but like through this re-election process, we've all gotten to know each other really well. And we've all built like these really good connections and this really good like team mentality where it's like, how can we help each other out? how can we make sure that we're supporting each other while we're working on this campaign stuff, because it is a lot. And I think that that will translate into us going into office.
Thank you for that answer. Mr. Nguyen, with all due sensitivity, do you think you have the mental and emotional bandwidth to take on the SGA presidency? And if so, why?
So when you asked that question, Lindsay, two things kind of resonated with me. One being Dr. Agarwal has said, change is difficult, but with change comes new opportunities to make UMKC a better place for all. That's something that has stuck with me since, as well as the concept of learning to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. I think both things have, got me to where I am today, with a lot of mentoring from upperclassmen, those that I'm able to interact with. Being a biology and chemistry major myself, it's a lot of time management. It's a lot of being proactive, learning how to balance things. And something that I've learned at my time when I was president of Pre-Dental Society is you can't do everything by yourself. And because I was on the team on the exec board, we had to put on an annual symposium at the School of Dentistry where we had over 100 pre-dents across the Midwest, from KU to Wichita, UMKC, Mizzou. And to really coordinate with the team, it takes planning. It takes, everyone, holding their weight, shouldering, a little bit of the burden, cutting up, a piece of pie so everyone's able to be a part of the team. So everyone's able to help out where they can. It's playing to your strength. It's if you're weak in one area, perhaps someone else can complement you, help you, and support you. And I think, the benefit of pushing each other and a team dynamic to be better, to do better, I think that will allow UMKC to be put in a better place, to be in a better place to, as people say, be better than who you were yesterday. I think that applies to make, UMKC a better place tomorrow based on what we are able to do now in the present.
Thank you. Last year, much of the debate focused on the SGA budget, with multiple candidates promising to decrease the stipend amounts for paid SGA officers, with then candidate Brandon Henderson promising to donate $2,000 of his stipend back to the Student Activity Fee Fund. During the Henderson-Ansari administration, we have seen stipend amounts move between officers. However, the total amount of money used for the stipends has only decreased by $1,000 to allow a new total of $24,400. To Mr. Nguyen, do you think that SGA stipends are too high? And if so, how do you plan to decrease them?
I think when I'm trying to think through this, I think with the monetary values or the compensations that they give per position, I think it's important to know what is the intent, or if the money should go somewhere else, whether to be donated to OSI, where is it going? What is the intent of it? I think it's the mindset of, whether if someone's able to give, $5 or $500, it's, the mindset of what are you going to do with it? What can you make happen because of it? So as far as to my knowledge, I think I would want to refer to other expertise, refer to other people who may have held that position, and to see what would they have done with that money, whether that be reach out to Brandon, who was a former SGA president, or even Justice, reaching out to him. What would they have done, and learning really from their advice, their wisdom, and anyone both older, younger than me, from different backgrounds with different perspectives of what kind of changes can be implemented based on what is coming in, or what can we do in the now.
Thank you. To President Ansari, do you see this as going back on last year's campaign promises?
So I know that there has been lots of conversations over the past few years over the stipends that the executive board has paid. And one thing I do want to make clear is that we did shift the money around, like you were talking about with the SGA stipends, so that we would make sure that our chief of staff and our social media person will be paid this season going forward. Because we recognize how much work these people put in, and we want to make sure that they wanted to get paid. And then going off of that, I think that lots of people don't understand how much time and work goes into like being part of the executive board. So I am someone who is 100% independent. I pay for my own medical and all of that, my own insurance, my own phone bill. And so on top of like the SGA pay that I get, I also like do paid volunteering for Sunrise Movement Kansas City, and that is the only way that I have been able to like prioritize my like work for SGA, my work for Sunrise. Because if I wasn't getting paid for all the work that I do for SGA, I probably commit to around 15 to 20 hours a week doing everything I do for SGA. I would have to pick up a job on top of like my Sunrise pay, and that would take away from my ability to focus on SGA and advocating for the students. I think that a lot of people look at the stipends and see them as very high. And I think that if you look at them in a bubble, they do look really high. But if you compare them to some of the other schools in our system, like Mizzou, for example, I'm pretty sure they get paid more than we do. So in a bubble, it looks kind of high. But I think in contrast with some of the other system schools, it's about on par or even maybe a little bit lower than what is typically paid to people on their student government executive boards. And I also think that like how I was talking about myself, like the fact that the executive board is paid allows students who are like poor or who are working class or who are like 100% financially independent to take on this job without having to take up like extra work and not being able to prioritize SGA.
A central topic of last year's SGA campaign was transparency. To President Ansari, has your administration done enough to ensure SGA is transparent and accessible to all students?
I definitely think that we've made a lot of progress from the previous administration, but I think that there's always more things that we can do. I know that we've made the effort of releasing all of our notes from Senate meetings, making sure that the links to our Senate meetings are also public. I don't know if they're public. They're on their own Word groups. I think you might have to sign in as a student to access them, and that's just because of safety reasons or privacy reasons. But we've done a lot of work that has gone past what previous administration has done, but I definitely think that there's more that we can do. I really want to look into maybe creating some kind of text service to like let students know who are interested, like, oh, we're having a Senate meeting, don't forget. And also like, I know that SGA has done a lot of work. Crit, who is our social media person, she has done immense amounts of work, like making Instagram posts to let people know about like what's going on. And I know that we've tried our best to make sure that students know, but a lot of times what I also do is like, I will go into all of the different student group chats I'm in. You can ask LSU and Asia and like Dems. I go in there and I'm like, hey, this thing is happening. Like we have applications open for senators. You should go apply. And like making sure that we're contacting these different student groups about that. And I think that there's a more formalized way that we can do that besides me just going in and like annoying everyone in these group chats about getting involved or about different things that we have coming up.
Thank you. To Mr. Nguyen, do you think the current SGA administration has done enough to be transparent and accessible to all students? And if not, how would your administration differ?
So I think to best answer that question, I think we should never be satisfied where we're at. I think, yes, it's doing well or where we're at. We should continue to try and make strides for improvements, not to be stagnant and to think or to be content or settle with what we have. I think making, continue progress and improvement, going back to what I said about, whether it be a person trying to be better than who you were yesterday, whether it's from a college point of view, UMKC, try to make UMKC better tomorrow than yesterday. Same thing with SGA, growth is good and growth is hard. But I think SGA, with everything else, try to create a better future together and with the students. So that's all I have to say. Nothing bad, nothing at all. So.
Thank you. Now for our closing question. Why should students vote for you? You will have each 3 minutes to answer, and we will begin with Mr. Nguyen.
So to answer that question in closing, I want to make my vision a reality that is shaped and formed from students' feedback. with their concerns, what they feel needed to be addressed on those particular issues. What we face today in society with COVID, it shows us how our landscape of education, our college experience can be ever changing, that we need to be flexible, to be adaptable to whatever obstacles that we may face in life. And I would like to bring to the table those three pillars on community service, professional development, and student engagement, how to get students connected and addressing what students like to see happen to happen. And I want to be proactive by working with those students, working with individuals who raise that concern. I want to allow that. I intend to have that be a stepping stone to those in higher missions, administrations, to make sure that those voices, those concerns are heard, and for any of those necessary changes to happen. And in my final year of UMKC, which I'll be a senior this fall, after watching, listening, and observing from the side, from the students that have graduated before me and those who are going to come after me, as I continue my time in schooling at UMKC, absorbing as much as I can. I want to learn as much as I can, and I want to listen to as much as I can. I want everything. I want to use everything that students have to say, they had to say, or they desire to say, as I am able to be a catalyst for change for my UMKC family, community, and fellow students, peers, whether if they're on campus right now or off campus. And to reiterate, ultimately, my mission is to instill and empower UMK students to be a person for their community, not just someone in their community. And I would like to humbly lead the UMKC community to encourage students to engage on campus in professional development and community service activities as we move beyond our COVID-19 situation.
Thank you for that answer. President Ansari, why should the students vote for you? You will have 3 minutes.
I honestly couldn't put it any better than Tim. I care greatly about the student body and about our campus. Like I said before, I really want to continue this public service that I do for y'all, advocating on behalf of y'all and representing y'all to the administration. I think that it's really important that whoever we have who sits in the president's seat is someone who cares very deeply about the students and is willing to challenge the chancellor and administration on things that they see red tape around, but we see opportunities and possibilities that we need to go forward with. I think that we need to make sure whoever we put in the president's seat is someone who is going to advocate for things, even if they don't see them as an issue, even if they don't fit the things that they're running on, even if there's extra things. Like I remember last year on a Roots for Reform campaign, while we were running, new issues popped up where students were like, hey, what can be done to address this? And we shifted our campaign to include those issues in it because we saw them as big rising issues that many students cared about, and so we wanted to include it. And so I'm also that person from that campaign who, if you see issues besides the ones that we're currently running on and you want us to address it, please feel free to contact us and we will figure out a plan to address that. And I'm just so grateful for the opportunity that I have been afforded, even if I don't get reelected, even though I hope I am. And I just want to say, regardless of who you go vote for, please make sure to go vote for yourself and for our campus. I want you to make sure that you're using your vote and your voice to pick someone who you think will do a good job of representing and advocating on your behalf.
Thank you, President Ansari and Mr. Nguyen, for your participation, and thank you to our audience for tuning in. Don't forget, official voting will take place on RU Groups March 23rd through 26th. Visit the University News website at info.umkc.edu/unews for more information on the election and slate of candidates. Good night.